Donald and Douglas, the Scottish twin engines, are brothers. Donald 9 and Douglas 10. They were twins, but they do get into arguments sometimes. One day, Donald and Douglas were in the yard. Sir Topham Hatt came to see them. Sir Topham Hatt had some jobs for Donald and Douglas. Sir Topham Hatt had a job for them. Donald and Douglas, said Sir Topham Hatt, you are to go to the quarry to collect some quarry cars, and I want you to take them to Brendam Docks. You must take them to the docks, and they must be unloaded at the docks at once. You must get there, you must get to the quarry, then to the docks straight away. Yes, sir, said Donald and Douglas. Good, said Sir Topham Hatt, and Sir Topham Hatt left. Let's go, said Donald. Yes, let's do it, said Douglas. And Donald and Douglas puffed away. Donald and Douglas puffed through the countryside. At last, Donald and Douglas arrived at the quarry. At the quarry, Mavis was shunting some freight cars. She was shunting the train for Donald and Douglas. Don't worry, Donald and Douglas, said Mavis. Your train will be ready soon. And soon, Donald and Douglas waited. I'll go in. Douglas went to the back. Donald was in front of Douglas. Mavis shunted the other cars. She shunted them. And Donald and Douglas were coupled up to them. Then the other cars were coupled behind them as well. Donald and Douglas were coupled up to their quarry cars. Then the freight cars were coupled to the brake van. At last, Donald and Douglas were ready to deliver the freight cars they were ready to deliver the cars to Brendam Docks. Are you ready? Said Douglas. Yes, I am, said Donald. Soon, the shunters released the brakes on the trucks, and Donald and Douglas started to puff away. Donald and Douglas puffed through the countryside. They were having a splendid time. We must get there as quickly as we can, they said. Yes, we must, said Donald. And they puffed and shuffed as fast as they could. The troublesome trucks were playing their tricks. Haul back, they giggled. But Donald and Douglas took no notice. They were decided to keep going on and on. Come on, let's go. Come on, let's go, they said. Then there was trouble. When they were going past Ellsbridge Station, they saw some fuel cars in the distance. Percy had parked some fuel cars up ahead. Donald and Douglas were really scared. Then, Donald and Douglas were scared. Donald could see the fuel cars. "Oh no!" cried Donald. Donald's driver applied the brakes as hard as he could, but it was too late. Donald and Douglas crashed into the fuel cars. Donald was derailed off the track. Donald was derailed off the track. Donald was on fire because he crashed into the fuel cars. The troublesome trucks laughed. The Donald was stranded. The cars were misbehaving. The cars pushed and pulled. Donald was burning on fire. Douglas's driver called 911. Donald and Douglas waited. At the Soda Search and Rescue Center, when they heard the emergency, Bell and Flynn hurried off to the rescue. Fiery Flynn to the rescue. "Don't worry, Donald and Douglas, we're coming to save you." And Bell and Flynn hurried off to the rescue. Bell and Flynn chuffed as fast as they could. Bell shunted Rocky. Rocky arrived. "Don't worry, Donald and Douglas. Don't worry, Donald. I'll have you back on the tracks in no time." Soon, Bell and Flynn put out the fire. And then Rocky started to lift Donald back onto the track. "Hold on, Donald," said Rocky. "I'll have you back on the track in no time." Donald's tender was back on the track. At last, they lifted Donald back onto the track. Bell and Flynn put out the fire. "You're safe now," said Bell. "Yes, you are," said Flynn. "We're going to have your fire put out." The fire was almost gone. And at last, the fuel cars were back on the track. Soon, the tracks were clear, and Donald and Douglas were on their way again. "Thank you," called Donald and Douglas to Bell and Flynn. "Thank you, Bell. Thank you, Flynn," said Donald and Douglas. At last, Donald and Douglas arrived at Brendam Docks. They delivered the flour. They delivered the quarry cars at once. Salty and Porter were surprised to see Donald and Douglas. "Hello, Donald. Hello, Douglas," said Salty. Donald and Douglas told Salty all about the accident. Salty and Porter were surprised. Donald and Douglas were uncoupled from their freight cars. And Donald and Douglas puffed on. Hooray for Donald and Douglas, said Salty and Porter. Donald and Douglas puffed away. Donald and Douglas puffed over the bridge. Sir Topham Hatt was very proud of them. Well done, Donald and Douglas, said Sir Topham Hatt. I'm very proud of you. You did awesome job. Then Duck passed by. Duck was on his way to collect some cars. And then Sir Topham Hatt was really proud of them. Donald and Douglas, you two have been very kind today, and I am really proud of you. So therefore, you two deserve to have your new coat of paint. Donald and Douglas were pleased. I know you did have an accident, but you are really good engines. Thank you, sir, said Donald and Douglas. They were really useful engines. Really nice Scottish engines.